on the screen is what has made him one of the defining filmmakers of his time. Often shocking, horrifying, and gruesome, but he does it without sacrificing story, character, humor, or intent. Some of you also know him as the Bear Jew from Inglourious Basterds. The director, producer, actor, and now studio head, Eli Roth.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
So, I want to tell a story that manages to complement both of us.
We like those.
So we had this scheduled for Stuff Falls Apart all the time. We were going to talk to Eli 6 months ago, and life got in the way. And back then, like the last thing that I did in preparation after watching 5 or 6 Eli Roth movies was, let me just remind myself about how he was introduced in Inglourious Basterds. A movie that I love, but I didn't really have time to watch again in full. It is, I've seen it 3 or 4 times. So I just find the scene where we meet him. And my wife walks in, she goes, what are you doing? I thought you were preparing for Eli Roth. I'm like, yeah, I'm watching his scene. And she goes, he's an actor? I'm like, yeah, he's in Inglourious Basterds. And she's like, and I pause the screen, and it's him on screen. And I go, well, who is he? Which one? I go, him. And she goes, that's Eli Roth? Yeah. And she goes, do you guys hang out at the Handsome Jewish Men Club? Like she was taken with you. Yeah.
I mean, I did it for the tribe. I thought this is my opportunity to, look, the Holy Grail, the Stiller, Sandler, Seinfeld, the Nebuchadnezzar Jewish, they're like the gods for me. But I was like, maybe we can have another kind of, Jew on screen. And I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and lifted weights and ate protein shakes. I was like, even if I'm on screen for 5 minutes, and then, beating a Nazi's head in with a baseball bat. This is so that there's one tough Jewish character in the movie. Just fun. This is it. And it's amazing. People really love that character. It means so much to people. Just, I think, kind of fighting oppression in general and fighting against the bad guy. It was an honor to do it. I remember Quentin at the end of the movie was like, he's like, hey, I'm thinking about maybe, what if Donowitz shoots Hitler? And I was like, I wouldn't shoot Hitler. He goes, you wouldn't? I go, no, I would stand over Hitler's head with a machine gun, unloading bullets, watching it disintegrate, so there's no chance that zombie Hitler comes back. Like, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
Great. Quentin Tarantino was on the Howard Stern show as we take this, I think last week. He was with Howard, I think, for a couple hours. And one of the things he said, he was talking about his writing process, was, and Howard was like, so what do you do? Who do you show your stuff? What do you do when you finish? How do you know it's good? And he said, well, there's some people I show it to. So who do you show it to? And I don't remember the first person he mentioned, but the second person he mentioned was I showed it to Eli Roth.
Wow, I haven't heard that. But yeah, that is true. And of course, imagine keeping the secret. First of all, it's the most inspiring and most depressing thing ever, because you're just like, I'll never in my, the stuff he can just dash off on a cocktail napkin off the top of his head, you're like, oh my God, this could win the Pulitzer. Like everything, even, his throwaway lines are like, his scraps, they're so good. So look, I obviously, I love Quentin, he's, a brother, and I would do the same thing with my, with my cut of my movies to show Quentin or Edgar Wright. Like there's a few people that really are going to be, that you really love and respect, that are going to be honest with you in a helpful way. And with Quentin, I know, if there's something that's bumping me, and he would want to know that. If we watch a movie and it's like, what is it? I go, do you know what drove me crazy? Why wasn't, and he's like, oh, that's a really good point. So it's never going, because I know it's such a pure expression of his soul and his creativity, but I also want to be helpful. I'm not going to go, well, you should have that character done. I go, oh my God, I was just picturing this character. What if they actually went off? What if from that, I'm kind of just seeing it from another angle, and he's like, oh, that's really interesting. Or, oh, you're right, that is confusing. I meant to clean that up. So I try to be helpful, but certainly not going to, give him notes.
It's funny, it's exactly what he said. I was like, so will they, do you want them to criticize it? And he was like, no. He goes, but I want to know that the beats work, and I can tell whether the beats work with them. And he goes, and if they have, you know, not giving me notes, but if they have a thought, I know they'll relay it in a way that's because they like it.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I remember when Quentin, you know, brought me to his house and read me the opening farmhouse scene in Inglourious Bastards. And I was just like, I mean, like, you know, because you're sitting there, we're in his kitchen, and he's like watching me read it. And I'm just like, Quentin, if you put this on stage, if this was a play, you'd have the Pulitzer Prize, not just the Tony Award. This is the greatest opening. I was like, you know, people at that moment in time was coming off of Death Proof. People were like, oh, he's lost it, his dialogue's boring, which is crazy to even think that people were saying that. But, you know, what came out of it with that scene with the would you offer a squirrel and a rat a saucer of milk, and are you hiding the Jews, and all of that stuff, I was like, this is the best. You beat the trailer scene, you know, the watch scene in Pulp Fiction, the trailer scene in True Romance, like the greatest scene you've ever done, you beat it in the opening scene. It's really, I've never read anything like it. And then I got to hear him read the whole Hitler bear juice scene. It's like when Quentin reads it, it's like you're getting this radio theater. It's like, no. Like, Quentin, you have a really good Hitler. It's like, man, that's pretty good. That's good Hitler. I'm like, your Hitler's amazing. But I also have the advantage when I'm reading the script, I really am so tuned into his meter of dialogue, I understand how he wants it. And when I was acting for him, it was a great chance to sort of relearn directing as an actor, but also when I'm on set, whether it's, you know, Tarantino or Sam Levinson on The Idol or whatever it is, I just want to, you know, I just did a movie with Vanessa Kirby that's going to come out. It was amazing. I got to act in a scene with her. Like, I just want to be the best, because I know what it's like to have a great actor and a pain in the ass actor and an actor that's just like, what do you need? Let me do it again. You want another one? Let's go. You got it? Let's go. I try to be that for the director.
If you were to make a list of the challenges that you need to get past as a director, where does working with the actors come in? Is it one? Is it two?
Well, it's the number one thing. I mean, you are there to get the performance from the actor, and part of that work is in the casting. You know, and obviously I'm looking at, you know, I get emotional looking at him. It's David Lynch, you know, who was such a dear friend and mentor. So I know we all applaud for David. Great. And really learned so much about acting and, you know, asking him about how do you direct the actors in Eraserhead when it's a, you know, an abstract scene or an absurd concept. And he's like, well, you know, the actors don't know that they're in a strange or absurd scene. It has to be truthful for their reality that they're in. And he also taught me, you know, look at the happy accidents. Don't, you know, it's like you have a movie in your head, but there's something else that's going to unfold in front of you. So just be open. Don't be so locked in here that you miss what's right here. And, you know, sometimes someone comes in with this kid who auditions doing crazy karate, and I was like, none of this is in the script and all of this will go in the movie. It's a screaming pancake. It was just nuts, but I was like, I couldn't take my eyes off it. I just instinctually knew I had to do it. So working with actors, I think now that, you know, Quentin almost, you know, lit me on fire in Inglourious Bastards, once I've been through that, I could tell that I had the confidence to direct Bruce Willis, to work with Russell Crowe, to direct Cate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis. When you have that confidence, now as a director, you know, Keanu Reeves, and it's a great feeling. I really love it. I love acting. I love the process. I love the rehearsal. And also watching what Quentin did, the way he completely clears the set, and he really lets the actors figure it out without the crew watching. And the whole thing goes faster, and it all comes from such an organic place that you're basically running it like a play. And then the DP comes in, and then they're kind of finding the shots. You know, his moves are so specific. I thought he would have it storyboarded like a comic book, but it's the opposite. Because Quentin himself is an actor and a writer. He really wants it to be from an organic place. So with the actors, whether it's Thanksgiving, whether it's Cabin Fever, like whatever it is, I always try to go into a space with just the actors and really, really work it so that we can perform it, whether there's a crew there or not. And once you do that and everyone knows what's going on, then you can run the whole scene for the crew, and then you plan your shots and the whole day goes fast. But for me, it's working with the actors is number one.
So I mean, it's tricky if they're not doing it as you want, expect, or you know they can deliver. You cast them, so you have an idea of what they can deliver. And I'm just, again, this will be my last reference to him, but I just heard him talk about it, which reminded me of how many things I want to ask you about. But one of them was, he said, I'm not going to give him a line reading unless it's a joke. because then there's a time and tempo, and maybe they're not getting the joke, or they lose that. Then I might say, no, you gotta, the beat is here, not here, try it that way. But at some point, you know, is it always private? If you have to say, like, hey, let's try it with, if they're not, there's a famous story of William Wyler with Charlton Heston and Ben-Hur, and they did a big scene, and Wyler comes into the dressing room, he's like, we're gonna run that once more, and Heston goes, so what do you need? What do you need? It's William Wyler, right? He's gonna, Heston is eager to hear what Wyler has got more Oscar nominations for his actors, I think, than anybody else. You know, what is it you want? And Wyler goes, I want it, better.
Famous story. You can never say that because you don't want to. They're obviously fragile and they want to do good. I mean, unless it's someone that you know, but they can. You know, you have to put it in a way that you can make a joke about stuff, but you don't want them to lose confidence. And I think you have to. You don't want to waste their time. They need to know you have a plan, even if it's sometimes. Well, let's just find it. I feel like what I like to do with an actor, if they're not getting there, is I go, we get it. We get it the way we had it. We get it the way we rehearse it. And then we go, let's try it this way. Like, we have time. Let's do another take. The other thing that I do is I try not to shoot multiple cameras. And I'll tell you why. TV uses multiple cameras. If you're wondering why every TV show kind of looks the same, it's because they're setting up a camera here and a camera here. Now, there are directors that are masters at it, like Ridley Scott. He knows, he's been doing this a lot longer than I have. He knows what he's doing, so I'm not taking a swipe at him. But for me, when you want to get a close-up of an actor, and the actor knows, okay, they're so used to TV where they have a wide and the close, but okay, if we have a wide shot and that camera there is getting our wide, you can't have that camera on a telephoto lens because you and I are lit for the wide. Our faces are not lit for a close-up. So if you put it on a telephoto, you're gonna get like a very kind of muddy, flat, sort of bad-looking close-up. So as an actor, you're thinking, well, you know, my close-up's gonna look awful because, you know, they're not really lighting. But when you have one camera and you go, great, we got the wide, and you take the camera and you're right where this guy is with his friend there, but the camera's where the monitor is, and now we're lighting it. Now you can see the actor go, oh, okay, they care, like now I can act with my eyes. Now I can think it and the camera will pick up my emotion, and they're taking time to properly light my close-up. Now they're going, oh, this is when I can really, you know, show off what I can do, and you give them everybody a hero movie star close-up, the performance changes. As soon as you yell action, you will see a different actor come out. So sometimes it's as simple as moving the camera closer and properly lighting them.
So we're in this room at the Hollywood Roosevelt, and because our festival starts tomorrow, we got pictures of some great stars on the wall, and there are two actors, a filmmaker and an actor facing us, the photos. One of them, David Lynch, that Eli referred to, and the other one I want to ask you about because it's Gene Hackman. And so, you know, Hackman, I think, is my favorite actor ever. And, you know, it's a big list of actors I love, really long list. But Hackman, you mentioned the close-up and acting with your eyes, and obviously a lot of actors could do it and do it well. But Hackman, man, close-ups on Hackman were, like, to me, immediately filled with tension. Because you like, what's this reaction that he's going to have? Is he going to have, is it going to be a twinkle moment where he's letting this moment go? Or are we going to experience the rage that we know that Hackman can deliver?
Hackman, I mean, for me, obviously, the first Hackman that I was introduced was Superman as Lex Luthor, and then, you know, when I was a kid, saw him, so to me, he was always like the greatest villain, but then you learn about Popeye Doyle and French Connection, and then, you know, and he's so funny in Royal Tenenbaums, so you really see that side of him, but for me, the one that is like, that has become kind of the defining Hackman performance that I watch over and over is The Conversation. And it's so much of him, and yeah, it's amazing. And the terrifying parallels when you see what his house was and the horrible ending and the end of The Conversation and the parallels of those, it's frightening. But that movie was a huge influence on Knock Knock, and in fact, that's
the Keanu Reeves.
The Keanu Reeves Honor to Artemis Lorenz is a film like that. But the David Shire score was very much influenced the score for Knock Knock. But it's such a contained, tense, and to think that was his like Coppola's like, you know, little movie he did between Godfather 1 and 2 and his off year.
It's a sandwich movie.
Like,
yeah,
it's not this like what? Like how do you? I mean, that run is unmatched. But that performance by Hackman is just It's so good.
And for Hackman, the movie he made after that was Night Moves, which is another just
Incredible.
unbelievable.
Scarecrow,
Yeah, yeah.
Night Moves, French Connection. There's just nobody who had what he had.
You mentioned the sound, and obviously, you know, he's a sound engineer in the conversation, but the sound in the conversation is amazing. Sound design incredibly important to you in all your films.
I love sound design, and look, obviously working with David Lynch. You know, when I was in film school, I studied sound mixing, and I remember building stuff by hand. You know, this is when we were mixing on mag, but for me, I started with.
What's that mean, mixing on mag?
Okay, sorry, magnetic tape, where you're not using it in Pro Tools, which is digital, but we would have to literally record it on tape, thread them up, you know, gang synchronize them and play them back with dubbers. Like
That's the thing you see in movies.
You see them moving back and forth, like that's the dub stage, because you're dubbing them, but then you'd have to re-record the day before you mix and recut all your effects because you've worn them down so many times. So it was a whole, and then finally in my senior year, someone's like, hey, there's this new thing called Pro Tools, a digital sound mix. It was like the greatest thing ever. But I started as an animator. You know, I would do hand-drawn animation, I would do claymation, stop-motion animation. In fact, this company, We Short, has just put out my stop-motion shorts that I did 25 years ago called Rotten Fruit.
Real quick, I don't want to interrupt your flow. You still draw? Do you still draw?
I terribly. Oh my gosh, my sketches are awful, but it's kind of part of the job. That's why I love David Lynch when he drew Dumbland and stuff, and then when I was working with him with DavidLynch.com, you know, just he's like, well, that's my style. So that's what I love about it. It's like, I don't draw well, but I love drawing. My mother's a painter and an artist, so I never perfected my drawing skills, but I can really draw enough to get the idea across. And they still look like the same drawings I did when I was 12. But the animation is fun. But in animation, you're starting with a blank canvas, and maybe that was from my mom as a painter, where there's literally nothing. There's no sound, so you're building a world sound by sound. And I remember with Cabin Fever, I became obsessive with the sound design. It was my first chance to really do it on that scale. And
Cabin Fever, your first feature film.
My first feature film, which I did for $1.5 million. I was like, I'm holding out to shoot it on Super 35 millimeter. We're getting everything on, shooting on film and recording. I remember Brian Best, our supervising sound editor, like for the leg shaving, I was like, it's gotta be a shovel being dragged across a driveway that's like, just sounds awful. I know it doesn't make sense. And then like in Hostel, when the Achilles tendon snaps, I was like, go out and get some fresh broccoli and snap it. I know it doesn't make logical sense, but it just gives you this awful feeling. But Eraserhead was the movie I watched where I was like, this whole movie, you know, what Al Splett and David Lynch did with that sound design, it's unmatched, you know, and it's just pure creativity, and sounds of Radiator, this industrial nightmare. To me, it was always, you could build the world with sound, especially when you don't have the budget.
Where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking plan. And any shop girl can be a top girl if she pleases the tired businessman. Hooray for Hollywood! You may be homely in your neighborhood.
To be an actor, see Mr. Factor, you make your kisser look good.
Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood! Hooray for Hollywood! Hey, Benny! Hi, Ronnie! Come on, brother, you're here! Hooray for Hollywood! They hire cowboys and they hang their chaps up and all their maps up and give them all that they lack. Now ain't it funny? They pay them money. Shows what you can do if your horse can act. Hooray for Hollywood! They hire fellas whose physiques are good, and then they tell them they're the perfect big shape men to act like ape men, and they convince them they should. They make them grunt and yell, oh,
And people think they're swell.
oh, oh, hooray for Hollywood. It's really got me hooray, 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 hooray for Hollywood.
And when I heard last week they just removed TCM from my
What? They removed TCM from your cable pack?
cable box, I freaked. I absolutely freaked. And so the man came this morning and he said, something is wrong. And I said, how could you let TCM go from my package? I'm leaving Spectrum.
Well, we're about to storm Spectrum headquarters.
Indeed we are, on Diane's behalf.
More to storm right now.
Indeed, indeed. Diane, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Diane.
Welcome, Larry. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you. We're doing a screening tomorrow night at midnight. You're all going to be there at midnight?
There you go.
I'm not. No, I have to be there. I want to be there, but we haven't done a midnight screening for 8 years or 6 years.
Yeah. Some of them earlier, but it's traditional to have a midnight screening, and that's in this gorgeous theater. We're going to look forward to it.
Oh, it's going to be great. And people hopefully will be dressing up,
Throwing stuff,
and yelling stuff.
saying the movie along with the screen.
It is another movie itself in the audience, right?
It's one of a kind experience. If you've never done it, midnight tomorrow night, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Be there or be square.
That's right. Don't dream it, be it.
That's right.
As we say.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much.
How are you guys doing? Good. Are you tired of going woo? No. You have more woos? Okay, good. There's more people coming.
What are you introducing tonight?
I'm introducing Suspicion. It's the first of my 4 Cary Grant films that I have here at the festival. Yes. And then I'm introducing Black Spirits, which is a great film.
I'll be there for Suspicion tonight as well.
Great.
To introduce you.
Who had on their bingo card that I'm introducing Teacher's Pet tonight?
Well, I did, because
Because I obsessed about it. I said nobody else introduces that movie except me.
you're obsessed about Doris Day. I mean, who would have thought?
Is anybody here going to see Teacher's Pet? Okay, very good. You'll hear me say that Clark Gable is my father in that movie. That is my father. I mean, my mother married my father because he looked like Clark Gable. My mom was 15 years old when she married Clark Gable. That's real? That is for real. It's a different era back then. It was a different era.
How's it going?
It's going well. How are you, Dave?
Good. I want you to ask Scott who he got to meet yesterday.
Scott, who'd you get to meet yesterday?
Carol Burnett. Oh! I heard that she was here, and I said, is there any way I could just sneak in and hide in the corner? And indeed, they made it happen, and Dave made sure that I got to meet her and tell her how important she was to me. She was the first cultural memory I ever had. When you said that, she went, oh my God. I remember seeing her on television. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. And just to be able to tell that to her it meant a lot to me.
She took a picture with you and your wife Shannon, very happy to do so. And the thing that, this is now the second time I've shot with Carol Burnett, because we did a series that aired on the channel last December. And she comes into the room and she is such a fan herself of TCM, and also just remembers being a fan of all these classic stars when she was a kid, that she is so gracious to everybody because she knows that just being friendly to someone for a couple minutes can make their day and give them a great story to tell. So that's one of my favorite things about her.
So when is this going to air?
Thanksgiving and the night after. We're gonna hold it for a little bit, but it's gonna be Thanksgiving with Carol. And if you guys watch the series that we did in December, we showed old movies that she spoofed on her show. We're gonna do the same thing, but this time it's gonna be all musicals. Go talk to other people.
I will. Thank you. Dave Karger, everybody.
Joe Mankiewicz was my great uncle. I am the cousin of Ben Mankiewicz. And the nephew, a great nephew of Joe Mankiewicz, and who directed Cleopatra, among many other movies.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All About Eve being
All About
one
Eve.
of them. Of
All
course.
About Eve. There's nothing better than All About Eve. But there's also Suddenly Last Summer, which I have the honor of introducing later tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good.
Suddenly Last Summer is a blast. If you've ever seen it, nobody smokes like Elizabeth Taylor.
Crazy.
It's crazy. It's certifiable.
Absolutely could not be made in that way today. Would be a very different movie and probably much tamer.
Is this your first festival?
I've been to a couple of others. I decided I'd show up for the other festivals.
Well, that's very nice of you to do. What are you most looking forward to seeing this weekend?
I have. Is this mic work?
Yeah. It does work. They can hear you.
Jakob Friedman, everybody. I think this is our 16th festival.
16th.
I think I've seen start to finish in a theater 3 movies in 16 years. Yeah.
I feel your pain.
One of them was Citizen Kane, and I fell asleep, which seems rude, but I was really tired. And it was a dark theater. So, and then I think I've seen 2 Nitrates, which the movies were amazing. Obviously, Eddie's introductions to them were painful, but the movies themselves I enjoyed. So I hope I can see something in VistaVision this week. I'd love to see Gunfight at the OK Corral.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
indeed.
that's probably my first choice. But this Empire Strikes Back film should be seeing this in a big crowded theater with an audience. That's a rare experience.
Indeed, it is. Well, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, Scott.
You're going to see more of Ben Mankiewicz all week, of course.
Hello, Mr. Lucas.
Welcome to the TCM Classic Film Festival, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I got to ask you, of all the characters that you introduced in The Empire Strikes Back, why is Yoda your favorite?
Well, I don't know what's my favorite. That question is very much like, oh, you've got 15 kids. Which one do you like the most?
Well, and so you were here for Blade Runner this weekend. Thank you for being here for that. So what are your thoughts on having Blade Runner be part of the TCM Classic Film Festival?
Well, Bob and I feel like we're part of the TCM Film Festival. We love TCM. No one paid me to say this. I love TCM because it's our flickering wallpaper. We like it on. We turn it on in the morning, and even if we forget, it's just like we just love the stories on there, and it's part of the era of movies that kind of jazzed me up to be an actress. And someone back in the line asked me, "What's your favorite film?" And I was like, Singing in the Rain, of course, 15 years old, I saw that movie, and Moses Supposes was like the best. And I'm a tap dancer, and I've been a tap dancer since I was 19. And it's just one of, and also the Eleanor Powell, Fred Astaire, Begin the Begin, like also one of the best tap dancers. And I only heard this later. I would hear Fred Astaire after he worked with Eleanor was like, not again, because she kicked his ass. I mean, she was like the most, really an amazing tap dancer, and he had to work really hard. Can you imagine rehearsing that number for like, what did they rehearse for, like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or however? They got to rehearse back in those days. We don't get to rehearse anymore in modern times, or rarely, but nobody wants to pay actors to rehearse, right? So, but that wasn't the system back then. These movies came out of a system that had its level of slavery. It's true. You were owned by a studio, but it also had that level of support, lessons, dancing, diction, and that's what Singing in the Rain kind of portrays so much.
a movie that I knew I loved, remember loving, and then saw it again recently because I had to speak to you, and it was better than I remembered. We discussed that it easily could have been a movie. It's 1989. It could have been 1949 in many ways.
Yeah, and I think because of the music, and some sort of classic oldies, and I read the script, Steve Close, who wrote it and directed it so beautifully, and we were friends, and he had slipped me the script years before that, and I fell in love with Susie Diamond, and I thought the script was so beautiful. But they couldn't get it made with me, so it was just kind of disappointing. And but then years later, they could. So we revisited that, and I was so excited. And it's one of my top most favorite experiences.
So the movies you made, I think in '87 you made which is Bostwick. Oh, I have the order here. And then in '88, Married Your Mom. Tequila Sunrise, which, as I mentioned, I couldn't be more in love with Tequila Sunrise. Married to the Mom, Tequila Sunrise, and Dangerous Liaisons. That is a 4-movie run, which I imagine opened up a world you couldn't have imagined. You could have made anything, pretty much, at that point, and you chose to come back to the script. You saw this is an opportunity to make this movie that I wanted to make years ago.
Well, it was very special, I felt, and the writing was so beautiful, and Michael Bell was shooting it, and we had the Bridges brothers starring it. I knew what an amazing opportunity it was.
I imagine that Steve Close, when he slipped you the script, and I like that he slipped it to you, like it makes it seem like there was some subterfuge, like there was spying going on.
That means they don't go through your agents.
Like it was a dead drop. When he did it, I didn't know. I guess everyone who saw Grease 2 when it came out knew. The number of people who prefer Grease 2 to Grease is a huge number. I was told in the CNN production office that it's a scientific studies. It's been proven that Grease 2 is better than Grease. And if you don't get it, you're not cool. So, who would everyone know in Hollywood that you could sing?
No. And I've always felt like I'm an actress who can sing pretty well, well enough when I'm called upon. But it's always I'm not trained. I didn't grow up singing, and I don't train in between. 10 years will go by, and then I have to sort of, I have to rise to the occasion. But no. But after, I have to say that after Baker Boys, I was approached about doing an album, and I just didn't feel. I didn't feel worthy of that, honestly. I just didn't feel like I was good enough to make an album.
Yeah,
I'm good enough to play kind of a good enough lounge singer kind of thing,
I don't know. You see the fact that Baker Boys? I mean, they have a reaction. Well, you're going to see in a few minutes. How many people have not seen the film? All right, enough. It's not like we're not going to spoil it. But the movie, I don't know how long it goes on. 12 minutes, some amount, 8 to 13 minutes happen before you enter the film. And it's a great entrance. And the brothers, the piano playing brothers, Bo Bridges and Jeff Bridges, have a reaction to you that the audience has, right? They've had 37 people audition. Number 38 comes in late, saying, oh shit, you're dropping your bag's spilling, and you're disorganized, but everybody's paying attention. And then you start to sing, and they're playing, and they look up at each other, which I suspect the reaction that everybody in the audience has when they hear your voice.
Well, that's good. But that entrance actually wasn't of course, it's scripted that I come and I audition, but it wasn't written that way, and that I actually fell down and broke my heel during the shot. And of course, Steve just kept rolling, and so they kept it in the film.
Almost your first, it's not your first line, but it's pretty close to your first line, and it really sets the tone for who this character is, how self-possessed she is, like filled with, you know, with almost a forced confidence that eventually becomes totally earned confidence. But you're like, as you're trying to get them to convince them to audition, you go, so where's the winner? Right? Noting very obviously that, okay, you've auditioned 37 people, I don't see anybody here. So, and I don't know, there's that strength. I'm struck by it. I mean, it's in.
Well, you know, I think it's the same thing. I told that story about when I showed up to do that commercial and nobody was there, and I waited for 5 hours.
Tell me, most of these people haven't heard of it.
Now, probably a lot of people wouldn't have waited for 6 hours, but I have a.
You've never been paid for an acting gig.
Never.
Afford
I had the courage. You know, I'm like this girl from Orange County. I'm 20 years old. It's the middle of the night. I'm standing on the street corner in my red terry cloth jumpsuit. Yes, looking at. And you know, and it was scary, and it was cold, but I had courage.
What was going through your mind then when hours went by and nobody was there? Did you think you'd been...
Well, when the sun started to come up, I thought, I'm not going to be in this commercial. They started shooting and I'm not there. And I knew Malibu was an hour away. So, but I thought, well, maybe. I have hope. I'm a hopeful person in the end.
So you mentioned, first of all, that red terry cloth jumpsuit. That's still around? Is that hanging in the closet?
And I don't have Susie Diamond's red dress.
Oh, that was a natural segue from one night outfit to another. So the signature scene of this film is Michelle dancing, writhing, I think, on the piano as Jeff Bridges plays. It is quite a scene. It is unbelievably alluring, unbelievably sexy. Scripted? How did that come about? How many takes are we doing of that? What was happening there?
Well, it was a long time ago. I don't remember how many takes, but I do. Sometimes when I read a script, and I think that I read something that scares me, I kind of forget that I read it. And then the week before shooting, I'll read the scene again. I'll wait, where this wasn't in the script. No, like they snuck it in on me or something, you know? And that was one of those scenes in the week before shooting. God, stand on top of the piano and sing? I mean, it's gonna be so corny. And I said that to Steve. I said, really? You want me to stand on top of the piano and sing? He said, it'll be good, it'll be good. He said, trust me, and if it's corny, I won't leave it in the movie. And it wasn't corny, and we left it in the movie.
It was not, but I mean, you're not fully standing the entire time, so I point that out.
Not the entire time.
You
try standing in 6-inch heels on top of a black lacquered piano.
You say that to me like you don't think I've done that. No, I get why you wouldn't be standing. I'm just so this is for people who aren't in this business, and including myself and that. I just talk about this business. But so does that? He's not choreographing your every move. Like once it starts. By the way, you're singing "Making Whoop," and really to Jeff Bridges, and do you? How do you know what to do? Where to move?
It was choreographed.
It was choreographed?
Yes, it was.
It was. Mm-hmm. So you're following the steps. You're learning the steps and then following along.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, I know that we all love movies, and movies,
I'm sorry to break that to you. No. I can see the disappointment on
I've been disappointed at many other things in life. No, I think it's amazing it's something that is that choreographed, then it gets shot, and the music is there, and you have two really talented actors at the core of the scene, and a director who has a vision, and then an editing, and that moment seems like the most organic, authentic moment we've seen.
That's the job of the actor, which is you get these moves that are choreographed, but then you bring those moves to life, and you fill in those spaces and make it your own. So it's more than just you move here and then you move here.
We had Jeff Bridges at this festival a few years ago when he was we played in this theater, the Big Lebowski. He got the entire packed theater to chant "Home" with him as he prowled the stage. He has a reputation as just one of the kindest, best dudes in this business. And then you mentioned somebody backstage that like he wanted to come for this, right?
He did. He sent me the sweetest email yesterday that he's on tour, I think with his photography books. Such a talented photographer, and he wanted to come. He came. He was here, and he and Paul Rudd introduced me when I got my star. Yeah.
So the part of the magic of this movie, most of the magic of this movie is you, Susie Diamond, but there was a little bit of this magic because here are these brothers, here are these famous Hollywood brothers, Bo and Jeff Bridges playing piano, playing brothers.
Yeah, it was so wonderful working with them, and they were, and they're just, and you just see it on screen, and Bo would go, "Hey, little brother, watch yourself, little brother." And that's the way they would talk to each other, and there's so much love, and Bo is definitely the big brother looking after little brother, making sure he doesn't get into any trouble.
And we see that version of that relationship playing on screen. They also have a fight on screen.
Yes, that was my first day of shooting. I came and they were doing the fight.
That's a nice welcome. They would, as young men, I think many people know this, but they staged fights in the back of a flatbed pickup. They'd drive around and they'd fight choreographed. Bo would rent the truck, they'd fight, brawling. Crowds would gather, crowds would be yelling, and somebody would call the cops and they'd drive off and go to the next Ralph's, and do it in another parking lot. They've been performing since they were tiny little kids from their parents. Did that when Steve Close gave you the script years before it got made? I imagine there was no thought that Jeff and Bo Bridges at that point would be the brothers, or was that always the plan?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember who was cast first. I can't remember.
I think Jeff was cast before Bo, and then it was brought up that Bo would do it.
Okay.
But you thought, you were like, great, whatever.
Oh, I thought it was genius.
Yeah.
I thought it was such a genius idea.
I didn't quite know what, because it's such a wonderful film, and it has there are two really meaningful relationships that you'll see, two incredibly human, the kind of roles that Michelle has played so effectively her entire career, just these relatable people, even if they're not in relatable jobs or anything like that. We just identify them as human, and it's the relationship between you and Jeff, and then also the relationship between Jeff and Bo, which is a beautiful penultimate scene, the second to last scene. So I was like, I thought, well, why is Steve Close? What has this guy been doing since 1989? And it turns out he wrote 7 of the Harry Potter books. Yeah. By himself. Like Steve Close and Steve Close. Yeah, he's been a busy guy writing movies.
I know I would love to do a sequel to this movie, to Baker Boys. Steve. But yeah, no, he's too busy writing Harry Potter. So.
I think that that should happen. Like Bo and Jeff are working.
Like,
you're
where
working.
are these people now? Where are these 3 people now?
Yeah, where?
Anywhere, doing anything.
Yeah, and because you'll see the movie ends wonderfully, ambiguously, and like life. I could talk to you about 1,000 movies, but we're going to show this one.
Congratulations on the footprint ceremony this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for showing up. Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Pfeiffer.
We wanted to get some laughs. We wanted to make sure that, we cut the tension with that. And I was surprised at how many people were in there. And also how great Kathy and Jimmy worked together. They come at their acting in very different ways. Kathy is a stage-trained actress. She's done brilliant work on stage and film and on television and catalog. And Jimmy was like, didn't want any words. He just wanted instinctive. And so we found a way that we, made the compromise and we rehearsed more than Jimmy wanted and less than Kathy. But it works. And the relationship, I thought, oh man, really?
Yeah! So, at the time of this film, you had a Tony nomination for Night Mother, you had an Obie Award for Frankie and Johnny and Claire de Lune. How were you feeling about the way things were going professionally? Was film, you had done some film roles, of course, but was a big film role like this in your sights?
No, I think actually when the book came out, a friend of mine said, this was about 4 years before we did the movie, and he said, well, when they make the movie of this, you should play. You and Martin Sheen should play this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I said, yeah, right. So no, I didn't know. I had come out here to do film, but I ended up doing a lot of plays at the table of shows that I had done in New York. So no, I didn't.
And Bill Golden, who wrote the screenplay, yeah, he recommended it. He said, what would be good for this Kathy Bates? And I thought, wow, what a great idea, because I had seen Kathy in a number of plays on stage, and I thought, wow, that's exactly who should play this part. And I'll tell the story, I don't know if you remember this, Kathy, but you came in and to audition, essentially. And she came in, we had a scene that we were going to read, and she started to read the scene, and she read like 2 lines, I think, 2 or 3 lines. And I said, that's enough, you can do this. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, she thought, what am I cutting her off? I said, no, you can do this, I know you can do it. And she went, really, really? And then as she walked out of the room, she said, can I call my mother? I said, yes, you can call your mother.
That's so great. Kathy, do you have a recollection of your first reaction to whatever you read first, whether it was Stephen King's book or William Goldman's script, and you saw everything about Annie?
Well, I read the book, and in fact, I remember being in St. Louis and us having a phone call. I don't know if you remember this, but I was doing something else, and I'm kind of a literal-minded person. And I remember saying, I don't know if it was about the guy her rolling over the guy with the lawnmower.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
I was crushed because you took that out.
We took that out where she rolls over with the lawnmower, and also in the book, if you read the book, and I'm sure you have, is in the hobbling scene, which is, it's hard to look at. In the book, Annie Wilkes actually chops his feet off. Right. And it wasn't because I wanted it to be less gruesome or whatever. It's pretty gruesome as it is. The thought I had was, he goes through this whole experience of being, essentially tortured in jail by his #1 fan, and he's wanted to break away from misery. He's written this other book, which she makes him burn, and my thought was he always wanted to just go beyond misery, and I wanted him to leave being intact, having learned. I mean, he's still hobbled and all that, but he's now a full person, so I didn't want to have him not have feet at the end. He could walk around.
You said you shouldn't have to lose something after you've learned something.
That's right.
That's what you felt. I didn't feel that way at all. What I thought was so beautiful is that when you go, it was like being the nurse.
Yeah.
Scalpel, cauterize, the whole thing, and it just had a beautiful poetic progression.
And and the progression would wound up with a lawnmower over the top. Because that's part of what a nurse
No, you
learns.
thought that you thought that was jumping the shark.
Yeah, maybe.
Rob, you can tell me if any of this is apocryphal, but when I went and looked at the list of people who allegedly were offered the role of Paul Sheldon, this is the list that I found. William Hurt, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Harrison Ford, Kevin Kline, Dustin Hoffman, Michael Douglas, Robert Redford, Gene Hackman, Richard Dreyfuss. Why did nobody want
You know who you left out? Warren Beatty. And I'll tell you, he was the most important of all of those. I did meet with Redford about it, and he was interested a little bit. I actually went back to William Hurt a couple of times, and Dreyfuss is interesting, because Richard Dreyfuss, I had offered him the lead part in When Harry Met Sally, which is the film I made before this. And so he didn't, he met a little bit, and he just didn't think it was, he said, you got a great director, but not a great script. And I thought, Jesus, Laura Efron is a great screenwriter. She's sitting there. So now, when Harry Met Sally comes out, a huge hit, I call him up about this, and he says, I'll do it. Whatever it is, I'll do it. And then he turned this down. But now, Warren Beatty played the biggest role in this, in that he came in, he was very interested. He came in every day for a couple of months to work on the script with me and Andy Scheinman. We had now taken over from Bill, and we were writing the other drafts. And he said, this is not a horror movie. This is not a thriller. He said, this is a prison movie. That's what you have to think about. It's a prison movie. And this man is in jail, and he has to be as smart as you guys are in trying to figure out how to get out of jail. And so everything we did in terms of tightening up, plugging up the holes in the script was addressing that. And after 2 months, we had a script that I thought was airtight, and there were no holes left in it. And then he said, I don't know if I want to do, I said, Warren, we worked on this. He says, yeah, I know. If you don't find anybody else, you can always come back to me.
Wasn't it his idea to have the dinner scene?
No, interestingly enough, that was mine and Andy Scheinman, where they had the dinner, and he saved up the novel to try to drug her. But that was in service of breaking out of prison. I thought, what would this guy do? How could he, you always hear about the gun that's shaped like the bar of soap, and they hit. And we came up with all of those things that and I love the moment where, she knocks it over. Saving that novel.
Kathy, I mean, the obvious question is, how did you come to try to understand a woman who behaves in the way that Annie Wilkes does? And I will tell you all, maybe some of you have seen this. Kathy did an incredible interview with Ben Mankiewicz on CBS Sunday Morning, where you talked about this character, and you even said this is a woman who becomes obsessed with this man, and you said something like, and I have kind of that in me a little bit. But I'd love to know how you came to understand this.
have to come out now.
I accepted that I am not.
You accepted that you are this woman.
I had an interview recently with someone. They said, "What character you most like?" And I said, "I think Annie Rose." I do. I mean, I have like, you know, I get kind of manic, and then I can get kind of down, and I had come to you really after Night Mother. I was playing a woman like that, and she was suicidal, and so there was a lot of that. I mean, you know, sometimes you can like get obsessed about somebody very talented.
Everybody lets off steam every once in a while. When we started working on this, Kathy, you know, she's such a dedicated actress, and she's so, you know, focused on wanting to make this work. And she said, you know, she would take the character home with her a lot of times, and she said, I can't get it out of my head, I'm trying to, you know, and I said to her, I said, you have to trust that you have one of the great acting instruments of all time, and you can leave that character here at the studio and go home and be yourself, and don't be worried that you won't be able to pick it back up again. And I think that that's what you were able to do. And she has that.
How's that going for you? How's that prospect going for you, leaving it on the stage?
Yes, it was a good, that was a good note. I was just thinking about something else that you said that I thought was so helpful, is that when we first started working on it together with Jimmy, and I remember coming to you saying, I don't know, he's not giving me anything, I'm not getting anything back, and you said,
And I thought it was perfect that he would be so constrained by the fact that he had to stay in bed. And I would come to the set every day, and because he was in the set, I'd say, Jimmy, now listen, in this scene, you're in bed. I did that to him every day. He woke up on the bed again. No, you're in bed.
When we did the final fight scene, I think I was telling you backstage that after that, where he really has to slam my head against the floor, it was very upsetting afterwards to be on the other side of that. I mean, thank God I have never been in a relationship like that. But there's still time. It was really upsetting to be on the other end of that, you know, to feel all of that. And but I loved him. God rest him.
I've got time for a couple last questions. I mean, I want to shout out Barry Sonnenfeld, who was the DP on this, because I think he did such a great job. And Roth, the way you guys worked together, all the really interesting close-ups of the car door being pried open, or the shaving, or the cigarette being lit. I'd be curious to know, Kathy, when you saw the finished product and saw, I mean, you bring so much to this movie, and at the same time, the filmmaking enhances your performance too. What was your reaction when you saw how it all came together?
I was horrified. I don't know if you ever knew that, but we went to the screening room and I left there and my face was just drained to color, and I thought, oh, man. I was out at the very end of a branch, and I could just hear the saw. You know, I thought, this is the end of my career. Before it even got started.
And then look what happened, she wins an Oscar.
Because I remember before that you said, you know, you can campaign, but you know, you can't, you're not going to get it. You said because it's a horror movie, and
and they don't usually get
whatever. And then the night you were, I just remember you standing and you were like, yeah!
Yeah! I mean, it's an amazing performance.
So I just rewatched Mildred Pierce, for whatever, the 10th, 12th time.
80th.
Yeah, and I'd read something to pay attention to the sound design.
No, really?
And you notice it in the police station, right in the beginning, in the first 20 minutes of the movie, was the scene. How many people have not seen Mildred Pierce? We're not spoiling anything. There's a murder at the beginning, and then it's back. That's it.
That's it. And also,
but the murder happens in the first 35 seconds.
And it didn't happen in the book. They film noired this thing up. They based it on the book, and they just kind of zhuzhed it up, and it became a great movie.
And part of that noir feeling is that sense of sort of that ticking time bomb for Joan Crawford, and in the police station. There's the only sound. There's no music at all, and they've amplified rustling papers. There's a ticking clock.
Yeah, the ticking clock is.
I mean, it's as if they knew what they were doing.
First of all, let me just say, love for Joan Crawford has nothing to do with your sexuality, and this is proof right here. Do you understand me? He loves Joan Crawford, and believe me, there's nothing. So, my gate, I was like, my whole thing about Joan Crawford is that she was, I know she was a driven woman and probably highly insecure, but also, everybody you see in documentaries talking about her, she was really a nice woman. She was a good woman. She was a little over the top. Every time she left a day of filming, she would say to the crew, "Bless you." And Betty Davis was like, "Is bless you here yet?" But she was an India Adams who sang for her in Torch Song. Did you ever see Torch Song? Where she plays Jenny Stewart? And spoil that line. Great movie.
We may be bringing you Torch Song.
We are going to do Torch Song this
Mario and I will have a treat coming this summer.
We do. And so India Adams was asked, she dubbed both Sid Charisse and Joan Crawford, who was nicer? And she actually said, "You think I'm going to say Sid Charisse, but Joan really was kind to me." And the interviewer said, "Well, wasn't she resentful that you were singing for her?" She goes, "Well, she wanted to sing it herself. She tried, but she couldn't get it done." And she actually said to me, "I hope my acting in this is as good as your singing." I'm sure she was upset she didn't sing her own stuff, but she was kind about it. I think she was a kind woman.
The crew was, on every film, would talk about how great Joan was. She knew everybody's name. She came in later in life, she brought in Pepsi.
She sure did.
She did, yeah. So and that wasn't always true of Betty.
How dare you say that about me? Joan Crawford campaigned against me. I lost the Oscar for Baby Jane. She went.
Interestingly.
She went.
Interestingly, Ann Sheridan turned this part down, saying, I want to quote Ann Sheridan directly, "I didn't like the story. Mildred was too tough, and the kid was an absolute horror." I'm going to return to that story in a moment, but first, the kid, Ann Blythe, who's been a great friend of TCM, sent us an email that said how sorry she was that she couldn't be here, how delighted she is that people are still thrilled and watching this movie, and that the Turner Classic Movies Film Festival, and I think she came on the cruise too, were just great experiences in her life, and she hopes you all enjoyed the film. So that's it. So who else? So Ann Sheridan turned it down. Barbara Stanwyck.
And I turned it down too, so that bitch could win an Oscar. And in return, she campaigned against me in 1962 when I lost for Baby Jane. She went to every actress on the East Coast and said, "If you cannot accept, I will do it." That night, when the winner was not me, there Joan was clutching the Oscar to her breast as if it was her own baby and she was breastfeeding it. There was Joan. And then she said to Anne Bancroft, "Let me take this Oscar around the world. I will bathe it in all the waters of the world." And 1 year later, she gave the Oscar to Miss Bancroft backstage at a party after Mother Courage. And that's not true. But that's not true. But she said, oh, Johnny Carson.
It's never not funny. It's never not funny.
It's sick because I can't get out of it sometimes. It's so weird.
But by the way, one of the great ways you get out of it is you just make up a story. Doesn't make any difference.
No, oh yeah, absolutely. You know, well, I have to, well, Anyway, let me get this off. Oh, yes, I do.
I don't need you to get, but I don't like when people come and pick stuff up. You presume that you're a big star and you know, like, what I want all the time, what everybody wants all the time. I mean, you're not even a movie star, you're on a case.
Ben, get your things out of this theater before I throw you out. Get out! Get out before I kill you! First of all, I never get a better reaction than anybody that I'm with Mario, and this is why people come to this festival, to see a film like Mildred Pierce in a theater like this on Nitrate. Thank you guys for coming, thank you guys for supporting. I'd rather cut off my hand than hit you like that.
The first one landed, by the way. The first one landed.
I know it did. You told me to slap it. I wanted to fake it.
I said, it's got to make a noise.
Oh.
Make a noise.
Well, next time, I'll French kiss you.
Interesting.
Didn't make this film. There's a moment in time in which I thought I was going to produce it and have somebody else direct it, and then my producer talked me out of it. Said, "You're out of your mind. You've got to do it." And then who should be in it? Remember, we were at the Broadway Deli, which was used in a scene, which I used in this scene when De Niro goes and meets Amy Brenneman. And he said, "You've got to do it." And we started talking about who would be the ideal cast, and it was Al and Bob, and and kind of off we went.
So, Al, you knew you hadn't been in a movie with Robert De Niro. I'm guessing that wasn't a surprise to you. But what was that experience like? I mean, let me ask you this: do you have any sense of either of you guys of what you mean to people like us, that putting you two guys in a scene together was going to matter to people who love movies?
No, I didn't. No, because I met Bob in 1968 in Manhattan, and I just had a brush in with him. It was nice, and I saw that he had just about it, kind of magnetism with him. He just was, and then I got to know him, of course, throughout the years, 20 years. So I knew him pretty well before we did the film. I didn't have that. I didn't think of it. I mean, because we were talking all the time. I didn't think it was anything special that we were doing. But apparently
it was. I have to say, that's my, it's not modesty talking here. It's just, I'm so damn dumb. You know, I sometimes just get carried away in other things, and I hope I don't do that tonight. But yeah, but I did know he's an actor. He's a great actor. I mean, really great. And he did something. I think that was, I don't know if you mastered it, Mike, but he said, let's not rehearse.
Well, we did. I never, I believe in very rigorous preparation, but you never ever take anything to that moment where you wish you'd have shot it. So then you're talking about a scene, you're talking about character, you're doing a lot of work, which we all did, on understanding who these characters were, and Al and Bob and Val and everybody acquiring the skills that these characters would have had in real life. But then rehearsals are very delicate. You never take something, and then particularly this pivotal scene, which is the nexus of the whole movie, you would never actually rehearse it. We talked about it in paraphrase, but we were all of the same mind.
I wasn't. No, I wasn't. You know, like, I usually rehearse, you know. I don't know why. So when he said it to me, I'm sure you must have made me conscious of it. We can't remember these things. But I must say, when Bob said it to me, I thought, this is a great idea, you know, not to rehearse. But you know, you got to know your words. No, isn't that what we do? so we knew our words. Surprisingly, it was a beautifully written scene by Mike, and and then we just got there. For some reason, it was the right thing to do. The not knowing what we were going to say. So I really.
You guys are also, both of you, are masters of cadence. I mean, Mike writes the script, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't tell you how long to pause, where to dart your eyes, right? You know, that's you and Bob having created these characters.
Well, no, he usually shoots about 48 takes, and either we get it or we don't get it. You know, he'll know when we get it. You know. No, I mean, yeah, he doesn't say those things.
Let's see, Al was always great on take 5, 6, 7, or 8, right in that zone. Okay? And when we would get done, you know, and it would be great, and I'd have it, and I'd maybe have some variations on it. Then sometimes Al would say, "Can I do a free one?" I said, "Sure." What a free one is,
can I do a free one?
It's basically being unplugged, which is Al being unplugged. And so then nobody knows what exactly is going to happen in one of those things. So, including Al. So we had a couple of scenes in the movie that are pretty riotous, which was the product of that.
Yeah.
And we
So
had
there's
one
some scenes
actor
in the
who
movies
came
that
in
are-
about 2/3 of the way through and wasn't aware that we did this, and then kind of hit him as a surprise. It wouldn't affect him.
Bob is so sometimes undistinguishable. You know, you see him in the street in a restaurant. He doesn't look like Robert De Niro. I never recognize him when I go. He says, "I'm over here, Al, for God's sake." I said, "Well, he looks like so many people sometimes because he plays so many. You know what I mean? Maybe I do too. I don't know. But, maybe actors do in general. No? Okay. I'll take your word for it."
So, Mike, did you have a, look, I don't know, this is such a guy running the interview question, but you knew these guys, you know this is, you're sitting there with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and you know they've never done a scene together, and here you are, you wrote it, and you're directing it. Was there was there extra quiet on the set? Was there a sense there that this was something really cool?
No, not at all. Because by that point we had a very thorough pre-production. We had been shooting for 5 or 6 weeks. When I schedule a film, I work very hard on scheduling. I take a scene like that that's terribly important, and I usually put it in the middle of the schedule, because when you're making a film, everybody gets better at making that film as you're making it. So you'd never do something like that first. You would never do it at the end. So it was very carefully orchestrated about where in the schedule it would land. And by that point, even in pre-production when we were talking about these rehearsals, we were concerned about our characters, about Neil McCauley, Vincent Hanna, and the significance of them coming together. So nobody's thinking outside the context of the story and the film and these characters and this collision, which is carefully brought together by all the events that preceded, which you're about to see. And it's a very complex scene, and I can't imagine anybody else doing this except Al and Bob and pulling it off. These two men truly are antithetical to each other. They have some components of their personalities that are totally, and psyches that are totally opposite each other, and two that are exactly the same. They're the only two people in the film who are totally self-aware. There's no self-deception. They are aware of themselves. They sometimes stimulate themselves in certain ways to be sharp and be on the edge. Hannah's character, and then also with Neil McCauley, Bob's character. And so, it really was a very careful moment. And that's why I picked Kate Mantilini's, because it's a black and white interior. I wanted nothing to intrude in what these two actors were going to do.
I mean, for a guy who thought he knew a lot about that scene, it turns out I didn't know a lot about that scene. Kate Mantilini's, how many people here know Kate Mantilini's? I'm sure many. It was a wonderful restaurant on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles for a very long time, closed, 5-6 years ago. And that's where the scene was shot. So the fact that it provided sort of that sterile environment, a little slick, but somehow...
Sorry, did who provide that?
Say again?
I didn't hear what you said.
I said choosing that environment, the black and white nature of Kate Mantilini's. You didn't want it to be any place flashy.
I wanted it to be so that these two human beings, that all your attention is focused on what's going on, because when Bob shifted like this, which put his hand closer to where he probably had a concealed weapon, right in the middle of dialogue, you would see Al do some other move that was counter. There was a kind of an organic unity to the take. So I wanted to capture their work simultaneously, meaning there was an organic unity to take 10 that was different than take 11 and different than take 12. So that's why I was using 3 cameras, and most of the scene is take 11.
Most of it's take 11 with little sprinklings from other takes, but most of it's take 11. Wow. What do you recall of shooting that, Al? Yeah.
Well, I was relatively at ease, I thought, and that's the setting. I knew Bob, I knew Michael. I thought there was a great crew. You just felt comfortable doing it. And I think that's what directors do. They set the ambience so that you feel like this is what we're doing, and you feel comfortable with that. Like, it's almost like, I use the old story of, I like to use this story all the time about a tightrope walker, and we all are in a sense, but that applies more for the theater, stage acting, because in movie acting, you could just say, I wasn't right there. Can I start that thing again? Like here now tonight, I thought I entered with a little bit of, I should have entered like this. I'm jumping, I swear, I'm jumping.
You want to do it again?
At any event, though, may I go back there? No, I feel that's what it is, and with a film, and guys like Michael, great directors, you feel you have a net onto you. You're protected by their intelligence, their wisdom, their imagination, and so that's very good to work with in that environment because you can trust them, so to speak. Sometimes when you do films, they don't pay attention to certain things. and you're somewhat, am I saying something for the very first time in my life, I think here? But you say something that you just felt, I don't think that the director will understand this or something. I think I went, so you hold yourself back. And in this one, I didn't, and if you see it, you'll see. Of course, my character is intense. And also, he's known to, do a sniff now and then. And we had actually a scene in the film where, Hannah, my guy, takes a tote, once or something. It's not in the film anymore.
Is that right? It's not in the film anymore?
No. That happens. Things get mixed around. Of course. So it all that it did is it may I may explain some of my reactions.
No, I got it. But I think it's.
But at the same time, it's very interesting. That it was a choice that I had made. And we had talked about it. But it's fine. I did a film where a guy sniffs a lot, believe me.
Yeah. Yes, you did.
And that was done way before Heat, so I got that out of my system.
But I mean, I think it's, this is going to get into one thing that I just personally want to talk about. I don't know whether it's going to be as interesting to everybody else. That's a revealing moment when Hannah does a little, because you obviously you're a human being, you're going to get tired, but it's like you're in the middle of this run and you can't let yourself get tired. You won't let yourself slow down. So that's, to me, why he does it. I think it's very revealing and in character.
Yes.
And it also gets to a little bit of what is clearly a Michael Mann skill, which is like Elmore Leonard's novels. You know how to do bad guys. Like, your villains are interesting and rounded and intriguing, and sometimes they're the most interesting characters. I think you think of De Niro, and you think of most of that gang, and you think of James Caan in Thief. Like, these are guys you want to know more about. Where do you think that comes from? Like, you like writing these guys?
It just comes from process. I don't think any other director knows how any other director directs films. Winter Brown said with another director, we have no idea. So every director and writer, in a way, has his own process. And for me, the ideas that I respond to are usually sparked by coming into contact with somebody who may be, say, John Santucci, who's the thief that Thief is based on. And there's an event that happened that was the foundation of Heat. And so then that kind of provokes, this would be great. And so that provokes a quest. And then you invent a character, and then you put the ideas of combining these two characters, and then you go on a further quest and get yourself into next to people who really do this, and that becomes a very rich experience, and also the milieu in which it's happening. So you get as close to the reality of it. I've never been interested in moving from something that's already existed in cinema or drama, but rather than real people. So there's Charlie Adamson, who was an old friend, bumped into Neil McCauley, the real Neil McCauley.
De Niro's character named Neil McCauley, based on a real criminal named Neil McCauley.
And they had been chasing each other, and they both became aware that McCauley, the De Niro character in real life, became aware that Charlie Adamson was pursuing him, and Charlie Adamson knew that he knew when they bumped into each other in a parking lot, and they almost went for weapons, but then Adamson said, "Let me buy you a cup of coffee." And the perception of Charlie's, of this thief, was kind of illuminating for me, in that he had great respect for him. He liked them personally, and as he said, he'd blow them out of his socks without thinking twice about it. So that became not a contradiction, it became both a true. And that duality is there in you know, in the kind of genome of the making of the film.
Well, you managed to, not just for Al here and for De Niro's character, the two primary propulsive forces of this film, almost every character in this movie has something more than just a little backstory. Like there is, I don't know, I feel like I know more about characters in this movie than almost any cop movie I have ever seen. And I think that's a tribute to the really outstanding cast that I named there at the top. I take it a lot of thought went into not just Al and Robert De Niro, but the whole cast.
Yeah, to me that's the work, is to get as close to the, you know, what's interesting about people. The first thing you learn is that everybody, regardless of who they are, whether they're a convict and Folsom prison, or they're a hunter and searcher, like Vincent Hanna, everybody has a mother, a brother, a father, a sister. They have concerns. They're either a White Sox fan or a Cubs fan. All of the dimensionality in real life is fascinating to all of us if we do this kind of work. And so to get yourself on a feeling and a psychological basis, on a conscious basis, as immersed as you can into that real emotional human reality, that to me is what, you know, the adventure of this, that's what it's all about.
Al, so I'm going to take it that you know, this film has I guess it's the greatest shootout ever on film. I think it's fair to say. It's a stunning sequence. You hadn't done anything quite like that before, right? I mean, you've done some action scenes, but this was prolonged. I mean, we were just talking backstage. This was like, you know, this is like the beginning to Saving Private Ryan, but on the streets of Los Angeles.
Well, you should see Scarface.
Were you in that? Was that
No, not really.
Yeah.
I was in a tomb. When I was up there shooting all over my ass off, all those people, all those guys, and I was in this thing, I had to do mantras and everything, because, you know, smoke's up in there. At least we were outside with this. But the choreography.
So that, and I'm going to interrupt you and let you continue, because that's really what you used the word that I was going to use, was that different from Scarface, which is a legendary scene, is that this was like a lot more people involved and more shots and focus keeps shifting.
Oh, yeah, and you knew that. He so staged it, you know, it's like, and it was no getting out of it. It wasn't difficult to do because of the way he staged it, because you knew where you were going, you knew what you were holding in your hand, and you knew what you could do and couldn't do, and then when you had to go around the corner, and I was sort of in shape to do it back then, you know. I mean, but it was the group, so to speak. It was one of those big scenes where everybody's in it. And who knew? I thought it was going to be a gunfight and the thing, but it was masterfully choreographed by Michael, and I think that helped it a lot. And when I see it, it's like, wow.